Welcome back to another episode of TPTV. We're here in Kansas City, Missouri with Michael Moore. Thank you for joining Puddles and I, where we talk about Arnold Jacobs all the time. Michael, you're here for the ICSOM convention.
Conference,
conference, not the convention, but the conference.
Yeah, I'm the Atlanta Symphony delegate, and
you've been in the Atlanta Symphony for 46.
Yeah,
about to start your 46th
about to start
season.
46, and I'm the treasurer of ICSOM as well. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, I don't have a life.
And
I don't know what I'm doing here.
Are you still president of the Atlanta Brass Society?
Yes, and we're getting ready to start another brass ensemble that the Atlanta Symphony is going to host. And that's good.
That's great.
I get to wave the stick for that. It'll be fun.
Well, I know the ABS in its history has done a lot for brass playing with publications and just encouraging excellent brass playing. So
yeah, and we did an interview with Jake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. A long time ago.
And besides that interview, Michael Moore has been a student of Arnold Jacobs. When did you first start studying with Mr. Jacobs?
It would have been about probably 1970. 69 or 70, yeah.
Do you remember what that first lesson or two, what that was like?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was pretty naive. I had this Schertzer 5-valve tuba, with the 5th valve with flat 2 and 3, and all that. It was nice, and he gave me some ideas. He said, did you ever think about a larger instrument? I thought, yeah, sure. And I asked him about that Bill Bell model, and then he said, yeah, that's a good horn, but why don't you get a Holton, because it's a copy of my horn. So I said, oh, really? So I ordered one. I think I paid $1,900 for it when it was new. I shouldn't say that in case I ever want to sell the damn thing, but anyone want to buy a tuba? Anyway, so I got it, ordered it, loved it. Absolutely loved it, and I brought it up there to show it to him soon after I got it, and he said, "This is a very good tuba, but it's not as good as mine."
Of course, yeah.
Of course,
you
yeah.
Say that quite often. What was it? What do you remember? What he taught you that time?
Well, we worked on excerpts. We worked on excerpts every lesson, and
Yeah.
we'd also, you know how it is. You can play a phrase, and he'll stop, and he'll work on it for 20 minutes, within the lesson. And if there's a trumpet player waiting out there or something, they can just wait. When you finally get it, and he was always very complimentary. He was very encouraging, always encouraging. He did something he liked. He never was like frown. That doesn't sound good. Do it again.
So you played excerpts. You played excerpts
Yeah.
quite a bit in your lessons, and so it was pretty much just a musical.
One thing that I remember him working on early was Meistersinger, because he was such a stickler on the rhythm of that. Just the first, bar, dee da da da,
Yeah.
getting that 8th note exactly in the right place.
I remember that.
Yeah. And so many people we do youth symphony auditions, and it's amazing the variations that you hear of that.
Yeah, it's a pretty lazy.
Unless they're my students or something, then I can tell that, okay, well, you've actually been initiated to how to play that 8th note, and it is so important. And it's easier in the orchestra because you got all the bass players. You don't have to think because you just play what they're playing, right?
So he got you to he got you to really place
place that 8th note, yeah. And just to play that thing, everything he taught me about time was so important. It wasn't, everyone thinks he was just about wind and song, but within the song part, he worked on rhythm so much, agogic accents and things like that are so important that you don't normally, that I think a lot of teachers just kind of glaze over.
Yeah.
But he was very, very big on rhythm. And I was a bass player. I played before I got in the orchestra. I played in nightclubs and things. And
Like Jake.
and during the orchestra, yeah, right. And we talked about that at the time. And I really sincerely believe that it helps your tuba playing. For one thing, the tacks, whether it's string bass or electric bass, just the boom, the instantaneous tone that
Immediate
you get.
sound,
Yeah, the immediate immediate sound and the delay. You know, he tended to play with a little bit of a boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
that kind of sound. And I think some of that he may have gotten from, the decay of the bass.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think a little of that. I mean, he could sustain, of course, and crescendo and everything else.
He could, yeah.
But just the bounciness that he was able to get, and even on that Meister Singer, boom, 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 boom. Getting that bounce to it. Instead of da 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 da, like you hear it with so many students who aren't initiated into how to really feel that.
Well, what kept you coming back? Because I know when I was in school at Northwestern in the 80s, early to mid 80s, before I went down to Savannah, there was, you would be up there getting lessons, and I would have, at Northwestern, I learned about you through like Mark Hughes and other students, Bob Dorr, Bill Zafis.
Oh, did you do any of his summer classes?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did those for several years.
Yeah. So what kept you coming back?
Well, I guess, if you haven't studied with him, you'd have to ask that question. I mean, you have, but they haven't.
Yeah.
So, well, because you get so much, and it just inspires you to practice, and I like to have more than one lesson. It's a hassle to go up there 11 hours. And a lot of times I would do that and have one lesson and come back, and I'd go with George Webster and Charlie went with some of them. Harry Maddox was always there, our first trombone at the time. And he'd have to squeeze in all three of us if he could. I remember once George had to drive all the way up there, and he says, there's some trumpet player who's having a problem, and I can't see you. And but I'll see Mike. He saw me because I played the tuba, and I felt really guilty. But I wasn't going to turn down the lesson.
So you guys would drive up there, show up, and then he'd give you the news.
Yeah, it was always,
news.
That's one thing that would drive you crazy about him. He was not organized at all about the scheduling lessons. Oh my God. You call him up and he says, well, call me in a week. And then call me before you leave. And of course, half the time when you call him, he's not there, and all that. But you finally get through. Okay, call me when you get there. That was always the good one. And it always worked for me. Worked for me. But not the guy who drove that trip. I remember that.
So you started your lessons, you had your initial lessons down on South Normal.
Yeah.
In the basement.
Yeah, with all the piles of stuff in there.
Newspapers, magazines.
Yeah, but the acoustics weren't too bad down there. It was okay. And his new studio was so much better.
Downtown.
Yeah.
Fine Arts Building, sure.
Yeah, and I remember him talking about the Venturi effect. Mm-hmm. Too, you remember that?
Yeah.
And he would demonstrate. He said Kleinhammer fooled him once, where he held the mouthpiece out. He didn't actually blow into the tube, but he held it out a little bit, and it sucked the other air into it, and it showed him having like a 10-liter capacity. It was amazing. Right. So then he figured out that was the Venturi effect.
So for you, it was just a matter of getting invigorated, repumped, taking in more music for him to work with you on. It wasn't that you were there because you were all locked up or you were super tight or anything like that. It was.
No, I didn't have any problems.
It was a musical thing.
Yeah, and I loved those master classes at Northwestern because I would hear him do that. I'd hear him working with somebody, or if I was lucky with me. And then you go into the practice room, and then you come back the next day, and it was just like amazing.
It always made you sound better.
Yeah, and you just didn't know that you could, because everything just works. So the flow that you get when you're really around that all the time.
Yeah.
And I remember him, and I use this in my own teaching too. Now I try to teach everybody, all of his students, all teach things that he taught, but I think we all retain different things.
I think you're right.
The whole idea of wind, and I'll never forget him saying that the whole thing about what is the definition of wind. And I teach at a couple of universities, and usually they just kind of sit there instead of getting out their phone and Googling wind, which I wish that someone would do once, but they just kind of, I don't know. And and this is air moving. He says, oh, okay, so I'm going to move some air right now. Is there any air moving? You know, my air is moving. Why isn't it wind? When does it become wind? But it's air in motion outside the body.
Yeah.
That's when it becomes wind. And you know, once students figure that out, it's like, oh yeah.
Right.
It's not supposed to be internalized pressures.
Right.
It's getting it out there. And you know, you really can't sing if you're worried about what's going on here. You know, keeping your throat closed and trying to meter the air in your throat or something like that. And I'm sure I did some of that kind of crap when I started. But I was very talented at, you know, I got my job when I was 18, and I was
pretty early.
I've had some students like that too, and you know, it's good. You got to be careful not to get burned out. I remember Harry Maddox had said he didn't think I'd live to be 25 because I was kind of hyper in those days. But it was fun. I started talking about how I used to play the trumpet. I wanted to be a trumpet player. I still love the trumpet, but I think I was a trumpet player in a former life, and now I'm paying penance for it. Okay. You know, I had to deal with trumpet players. No offense to trumpet players out there. Oh, okay, you can be offended. Anyway, I have to deal with trumpet players out there all the time. But now I have to play the tuba. But the good thing about playing the trumpet is high notes has always been really easy for me.
Yeah.
I mean, B low, I love just tossing that off. I love it. And the Symphony Fantastique and all that kind of stuff that's high. Man, I can play high all day. It's playing low that I've had to work on more. I mean, the low register and just keeping relaxed enough and all that. And Jake was great about that. He was really good about getting you to use lots of air down there and control it.
Yeah.
You know, where it's not using it all up in 2 seconds.
Right. Mike, did you feel or notice that his teaching was based on the individual? Was it or was it a run them through the factory, or what was it? Oh,
no, it was very individualized, and I would notice that driving back with those other guys, the trombone players, trombone and bass trombone and me. He would tell us all different things, and it was great having a conversation with other people who had a lesson with it, because it's like, well, I guess I didn't have a problem with that because we didn't talk about that, and that's true. If there was something that you're doing wrong and you needed to work on, he would work on that aspect with you. But if there's something right, he wouldn't. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know.
Yeah.
If you're already doing something really good, if he liked the way you play a phrase, he would tell you, oh, that was beautiful. You know. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. He was so encouraging.
Was
that way when something sounded good, and he was, yes, that's it. He slapped your yeah. Yeah.
Well, wasn't that like the best affirmation ever when he slapped your
absolutely.
Slapped your leg? Yeah, that was really something.
Absolutely. You have your buzz things, and then he'd buzz it, and all the vibrato and everything.
Right.
A little old-fashioned, but that's okay. And some people make fun of him.
Style.
Did that, but you know that's a real style, and I wish people would play it. You know, the idea of a white sound all the time is. I don't think that's appropriate.
Well, when you go back and you listen to singers from the 20s and 30s and violinists from the 20s and 30s, the vibrato.
They use more vibrato.
They use more vibrato. And that's
but I
when
think
he came
the idea
up.
of using no vibrato is misplaced sometimes. I mean, if you're playing with the trombones, you don't play with vibrato, you know. But if you're playing a solo or something, within good taste, and he certainly used plenty of it, and he didn't discourage me from using it either.
Right. Did you notice over the course of your studying with him, did anything change in terms of his teaching style? Did he start to emphasize more different things and de-emphasize others, or was it pretty much?
Well, he would teach me better if I showed up with a cup of coffee from downstairs.
Cream and sugar?
Yes. Right. And then he would kind of perk up, but you know, I don't know how he did it. All the students that he taught, he must have made a pile of money for one thing, but you know, he was just bang, bang, bang with students. So, but he would focus in right on you. Did things change? No, I don't think the things materially changed. I mean, my playing would change, and he would tell me different things. He would get, he would zero in a little bit more on details. Not so much like you need to use, your intercostals, this and that. He didn't talk about that so much later, unless I had a relapse and just kind of forgot to breathe. But I don't think that ever happened really. Because
Yeah.
when you have a lesson with him, you really start getting into that mode.
Yeah.
And so that you really make sure that you're doing it right, so you don't humiliate yourself in front of him.
Right. Yeah, he was definitely in terms of the you mentioned you changed, and so maybe the way he approached you changed as you changed. He didn't just keep telling you the same thing, even though you changed. Even though some things had gotten better, maybe some things maybe weren't as good. He changed with you. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, pretty much. When there's something coming up that I'm having trouble with, there was a couple of things like that, or I didn't know how to play, or I was curious how he would approach a Mahler excerpt or something like that, or we worked on some Bruckner as well. Of course, he's one of the world's greatest experts on how to play that kind of music, because Chicago Symphony plays it all the time, and he always had some wonderful insights about how to do that, and I loved it when he just demonstrates. Let me see your horn, and then he wants to, every time he played my horn, this is a very good tuba, but it's not as good as mine.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, and I bought a little horn from him, a 3/4 Con. See, I still play that in the quintet most of the time.
Oh,
A little Con
nice one.
3J.
Mm-hmm.
That the story is, it was the last prototype that Con made, and they gave it to him to try out, and he never gave it back to them. So they went into production with the model before that, the prototype before that. So I got probably the best one they ever made.
Wow.
And he sold it. Hopefully the Con companies will listen to this. They may want it back, but they're going to have to buy it back.
There you go.
Yeah, but it's a great little horn.
Yeah.
But he had horns all over the place, and he didn't mind selling them. I bought a couple of horns from him over the years. I bought a Shoki tuba too, and I had him look at that thing, and he really liked it. He didn't like the pitch on it, but he did not discourage me from buying it. I showed it to him first. He already up there anyway. But that horn, perfect beat-low horn, perfect Petrushka horn. Everything else, forget it.
I see.
That range, those two excerpts are more or less in the same range.
Yeah.
It's fine. If you get down to any lower, it's so out of tune you can't play it.
I see. I see. Did he when you went to him initially? Were you buzzing your mouthpiece? Of your own accord?
When I first, no, not really, not seriously.
So he encouraged you to do that?
He encouraged me to do that a lot. And the teacher that I had at the time at Georgia State, and I won't mention his name because he's passed on now, but he didn't believe that we buzzed.
Okay. Oh, I see.
Yeah. And Jake, of course, believes that we buzz, and whether you do or not doesn't matter. When you get that going, then everything has to be right. If you can make a buzz sound good, if you can buzz in tune and in time and all that, and play a nice phrase, it's so easy when you put it in the horn.
Yeah.
So
it's much better.
That's another thing I like about my little travel tuba.
Yeah.
And you have one too.
Yeah.
Mike told me about these
Travel
these
tuba.
horns, or I asked him about them, and he already had one. And they got a lot of resistance. They're stuffy a little bit and all that. But man, you play one of those for a while, and then play the big horn. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good tool. Definitely.
It is.
Definitely a good
when
tool.
you're traveling, wonderful.
How often did you get up there?
Hey, who asked the questions? You or me?
I think Puddles does.
Dude. So, I would get up there. Well, my first year in the orchestra, I was really lucky. We had a Mozart festival and a Bach festival the same year.
Nice.
I had lots of weeks to
Lots
go.
of time.
Yeah. But then after that, we also had, for years, children's concerts that were, we'd be done at 12:30 on Friday, and Jake taught on weekends too.
Saturdays.
So yeah, go up there and have a lesson on Saturday, if possible. If I didn't have to be, often Mondays were off, and I'd have another lesson on Monday. Then we'd drive down and have rehearsal on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So we did that for about 20 years. Off weeks, you know, playing the tuba, it's great. You get a lot more off weeks than most
Mm-hmm.
people. So between the off weeks and the weeks that were education weeks, I had lots of opportunities to go up there. And in the summer too, we had summers off in those days. We have them again, but that's a long story.
Right.
Yeah. So so I was able to get up there a lot. I mean, I didn't study like every week with him.
Yeah.
There were some weeks that I could have a couple of lessons, or a lesson one week and another lesson the next week, depending on his schedule.
Well, Mike, thanks so much for taking the time. Mike is, we're here at the Exam conference
Thank you. At Kansas City.
in Kansas City, and he just flew in from Mexico
Yeah.
late last
Miguel de
night,
Allende.
and you've been in meetings all day, and I really appreciate you taking the time. And Puddles wanted to, even though you've knocked him off the chair once or twice, he still wants to give you these reusable shopping bags, genuine University of Oregon reusable shopping bags for your shopping pleasure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these are like $1 at Whole Foods. So this
Really?
is- yeah, but not with this. on
These
it.
are more with the O. This
Oh,
is
oh
very, very
yes,
important.
yeah, I see that. Yes,
Yeah.
These are great.
Yeah.
So I'll use them. You mind if I put nice organic things in here?
Mm. Oh, that's good.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have to think organically.
Oh, for
we
organic.
we are human beings. We are not machines.
There you go.
One thing Jake told me, even though he rarely missed notes, was don't worry about it when you miss a note.
Yeah.
Don't have the whole paralysis by analysis thing. You know,
Exactly.
if you just keep going. And his psychology was just great. I mean,
Amazing, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it was.
I digress.
Well, no, that's a really great point. Just keep it. Allow yourself a quota, and don't be bothered.
And he used
Listen.
Herseth as an inspiration for that.
Yeah.
And I heard Herseth do that many times. He'd be playing some do da da blah da 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 da. You know, when he'd come in after he missed a note, the next note and all the notes after that, it's like it would like somebody flipped a switch, like, oh, I wasn't paying attention. And Jake talked about that and you know, it didn't. He hardly ever missed a note, but when he did, you know, it would get more awesome right after that.
Yeah.
Instead of stopping and beating himself up and saying, "Oh, I can't play. What's wrong with me?" You know,
Right.
just flip the switch and do it right at that point, because
Yeah.
you know what to do.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, you know what to do. Just do it.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks,
Okay.
man.
Thank you.
And now back to you.
Be careful to duck. Yeah.
Sorry, Puddles.
Duck and cover. Yeah. Herseth was so nice to me, and Ravinia especially. He was just smoking his pipe and just walking around. He was always really nice to me. Oops.
Puddles. Puddles, I think, has had a little bit too much, you know,